Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. It's time for this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown, and we are finally here. It's the month of June. We got official visits to talk about. But before we do, Gerry, let everybody know why if they've got anything with a motor and or on four wheels, they need to get in touch with Texas alum Mark Saunders.
Yes, absolutely. Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders serves the Austin and Round Rock area, the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need, Texas Longhorn fans. Everything from your home, car, boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and an ATV if you got one of those. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Here's my guarantee. With over 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Again, give him a call today if you're in the Austin and Round Rock area or the entire state of Texas. Do what so many other On Texas Football family members have done the last couple of years. Call Mark Saunders, 512-218-8571.
Gerry, Texas has official visitors coming in all across the spectrum as far as positional groups go. No one position group really dominating the visits this weekend. But if you look at our graphic, and for those only going audio only right now, Xavier Crowell is the first name listed on our graphic. And we always talk about the running back position because I've been very impressed, to say the least, Gerry, that Chad Scott got Texas not just back in the mix with some of the big-time backs on the board after taking over for Tashard Choice, but Texas is right in the thick of it with some of the best running back prospects in the country. Handicap the running back position overall, Gerry, going into this Xavier Crowell visit, and where does Texas sit with Crowell, one of the top prospects in the Southeast coming into this weekend?
Well, they currently have two guys scheduled for official visits, and that's Crowell this weekend out of Jackson, Alabama, and then KJ Edwards on June 20th out of Carthage, Texas, which I think we all think Texas is in a pretty good spot for KJ Edwards right now. But on Xavier Crowell, look, I'm of the opinion that Alabama is the favorite at in this weekend, but him and his family do like Texas. He was at Georgia last weekend. They took their best swing. After Texas this weekend, he goes to Auburn, midweek to FSU, and then Alabama to close out June 20th through 22nd before a June 26th commitment date. So I think Texas is right there. They're in this one. They're going to give it their all. They're all in on this recruitment. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to overcome Alabama, the in-state power there, and Robert Gillespie. That is his job in this recruiting class, is to win out for Xavier Crowell. Outside of those two guys, Derek Cooper still a possibility to make a midweek official visit this month. And Carson Baker, the running back from Langston Hughes, also a possibility to make a visit this month. So we'll see where it goes. Texas wants two backs. Right now, we believe they lead for KJ Edwards. The second back is in question.
We'll get to all the position groups involved here, but I do want to skip around because, CJ, I want to give you first dibs on Jamarian Carlton, the edge out of Temple. Local kid, been to Texas several times. He's making the visit. Going to be some in-state competition for him. You went to see him in Temple towards the end of spring practice during that evaluation period. What's your take on where that recruitment stands right now going into this visit?
Yeah, originally going into the month of May, Texas hadn't really been in a lot of contact with him. It kind of been sporadic with him. And then you saw Alan Clark make two stops up I-35 to go see him at Temple for spring practices. Then Texas gets in the mix. They got the June 6th official visit scheduled, in which he bumped SMU. But look, it still feels like it's a bit of an uphill battle here, right? I think Texas A&M is a team that's out in front at the moment. Carlton was at LSU last weekend as well. That's been a team that's been around in this recruitment as well. He liked USC. USC is pretty full. We'll see if they start losing guys later on in this cycle, because I think that was a school that early on piqued his interest quite a bit. But right now, Texas, this weekend right now, it's going to be telling in terms of where Texas goes from here with Carlton, especially with A&M to follow up. That feels like a weekend in which A&M could actually seal this one down. It'll be interesting to see if Texas is able to pry that door open a little bit more and progress this recruitment further on, or if things kind of have their writing on the wall moving forward after this weekend.
Guys, what do we think about edge in this class in general? Because that's an interesting position when you look at the 26 recruits in particular are going to get to campus in a year where Colin Simmons is draft eligible. And at the current trajectory, I think we'd all assume that's going to be his last season. So it's a position where, like, you constantly need to be recruiting guys that can get after the quarterback, that can affect the quarterback. Gerry, I'll start with you. Give me your 30,000-foot view on Edge going into June.
Well, I like the guys they're in on. The hard thing is which way they're going to go in it, and like which way guys are going to fall Texas way versus other ways. Dre Quinn out of Greater Atlanta Christian, Norcross, Georgia. Texas has some ends with and had a great unofficial visit in April, and I think there's some confidence in Austin. But you look at that official visit list. It's Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas, Tennessee. I mean, it's a battle royale there. Then you go over to Luke Wafel out of the Hun School in Princeton, who will be at Penn State this weekend, where his brother transferred to from Michigan. Can Texas overcome that? Wafel really likes Texas. The father likes Texas. They've been on campus 3 times on their own dime before the June 20th official visit. But Penn State obviously will try to shut this thing down and to where Wafel never gets to Texas. He was at Ohio State last weekend. Those are the 3 teams in this recruitment. Really, there was a visit to USC, a couple other visits around it, but it's more and more looking like that's going to come down to Penn State. Do you want to go to Penn State, play with your brother, or could a Texas or Ohio State upset Penn State? We shall see. Jake Krull out of Orlando, who's now at IMG, really talented edge prospect. I think Texas is right there. They had a good unofficial visit in April. He's coming on campus June 13th. Oklahoma's a player in that. Ohio State, where he was at last weekend's a player in that. He's at Florida this weekend. The one thing about this edge position, no matter who we talk about, they're all national recruitment, so they're in on the right guys. The question is, which way is it going to fall? And then you have a couple of those 5-tech edge kind of combo guys. Bryce Perry Wright out of Buford, who was at Clemson last weekend. Family's related to Grady Jarrett. He's at Miami this weekend, then Texas A&M. One of those 4. Texas, it feels like they have a real shot there. Then Jaraylen McCoy out of Tupelo, Mississippi, was at Florida last weekend, who's a major player. He's at Ole Miss this weekend before going to Texas, then closing out with LSU, where he was once committed. Again, these are massive recruiting battles. I think Texas is going to come out of this with 2 or 3 talented edges. I just can't wrap my head right now around how it's going to play out for Texas right now. We just mentioned Jamarian Carlton. There's a couple other edges on the board as well that Texas is going to bring in. But the key thing is just how are the dominoes going to fall here? Texas won't walk away empty-handed, but it's hard right now to kind of say this is who we think Texas may lead for or get until after, I think, the next couple rounds of OVs.
Yeah, one other name I wanted to mention in that edge room is Richard Wesley coming in June 20th. He'll be at Oregon this weekend. Of course, maybe a bit awkward after decommitting, drying off after that cannonball. Already back at Oregon to catch up with the Ducks. But look, Texas kind of gets a back end for official visits, if you will, because again, he wraps up his June official visit schedule with Texas, and then his next official visit will be at Ohio State August 30th, in which Texas will be up there in Columbus for that season opener. So Texas A&M, not a team to sleep on in that recruitment as well. So those are the 4 for Richard Wesley, the 5-star or OTF++, if you will, edge rusher out of Sierra Canyon. Really talented kid, but that's one to keep an eye on as well.
Whether you're talking about interior D-line, edge, offensive line, I just love the fact that when you're recruiting against other programs in the SEC footprint, you're in these national recruiting battles.
Yes.
Gerry, those line of scrimmage recruiting battles, they feel about as high stakes as it can get.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And once you add in Oregon, USC, and Miami to those, they're even more so. And that's the thing. There's every guy you look at, it's a national recruitment. Luke Wafel and New Jersey. Well, if you're going to go up to New Jersey for the top-ranked edge in the area, you're probably going to be battling Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Oh, he just happens to have a brother at Penn State. And in Mississippi, you know who you're battling. You're going to battle LSU and Ole Miss at least, and then Florida's involved with McCoy. And if you're going to Buford, Georgia, you're going to be battling Clemson and some neighboring schools, such as that for a kid out of Buford on the defensive line. So Texas is in on the right guys. But they also know in Lamar Brown, obviously, any of those an interior guy, you're going to Louisiana and battling for guys. Well, it's going to be LSU. It's probably going to be an A&M and one other SEC power you're battling. And in the case of a Lamar Brown, it's a Miami. So these recruitments have all the heavy hitters in them. And it's where you want to be if you're a Texas fan following recruiting. But you also have to take it with the understanding that you're definitely not going to get even the top 3 you want at the edge position. It's going to be a kind of a lengthy battle here to see where some of these guys the dominoes start to fall. but I do think Texas will walk away with 2 really good ones.
CJ, don't go all old school SNL Celebrity Jeopardy and make me look bad, but the board is yours. It's your pick. Well, I'll let you decide where you want to go next.
Yeah, I'll stick up in the DFW area. Cohen Brown coming in. I've seen him a few times up at Waxahachie. It wasn't for really the last 2 weeks until Texas got involved in this recruitment. And we've seen this other places where Texas, offers late and immediately gets an official visit scheduled. That basically happened with Cohen Brown. Chris Jackson stopped by Waxahachie twice in the spring to watch him in practice. And look, he's got a good quarterback throwing to him, and I think that helps. But Cohen Brown's a really good prospect, right? Lincoln Riley took him early in that USC cycle when they really started to add pieces to their recruiting class. Since backed off of that official visit, he was at Utah last weekend. Notre Dame is probably the team to watch in which he will get a final visit with the Fighting Irish. But this is an interesting visit for me because you look at where else Texas is looking on their wide receiver board. Aaron Gregory, Jabari Mack committed elsewhere. Jalen Lott now in that wide receiver room. Mason James is another. And then it's Chris Stewart, who's in the class, and Caden Finley, who Texas is also battling Notre Dame with. A lot kind of riding between Texas and the Irish in this recruitment, or in this cycle at wide receiver. And Cohen Brown certainly in that conversation.
Gerry, only one offensive lineman coming in this week. It's Malachi Lee out of Hawaii. Kyle Flood spent time out there. Obviously, Johnny Nanson's got strong ties out there. So does Dwayne Akina. It seems like everybody in Hawaii, all the football families out there really respected what Sark did not just in the recruitment, but in the development of Tua Tagovailoa. So Texas has every reason to go out there and get a kid. But Gerry, this recruitment with Malachi Lee, it's one that probably we just don't know, and just in terms of what's out there publicly, don't know as much about, say, a Samuel Roseboro or some of the other big-time offensive linemen on the board.
Yeah, good point on Malachi Lee. We talked about this on Coffee and Football a couple of times. He is not the guy. He's similar to John Turntine. They're not out there kind of boisterous about their recruiting on social media. They aren't out there giving a lot of quotes in interviews in recruiting. So a lot of times those guys can kind of get forgotten in a way, right, when everything is on social media today. And not a lot of offensive linemen are kind of boisterous out there on social media. Malachi Lee's one of those guys. You're starting to see more photos now that he's taking official visits. But this is the thing I've always said about Malachi Lee. You don't get on a plane in Athens if you're Stacy Searles and fly to Honolulu. You know how many talented offensive linemen you're passing over if you don't think this guy's an elite player. Texas, the same thing. And so these schools think this is one of the elite offensive linemen in the country. Rankings aside, doesn't matter. You're not going to Honolulu when you have limited days in May. That's a full day and a half of travel to get out there to see him if you don't think this guy's a potentially big-time player. And what the other thing that's interesting about Malachi Lee is his recruitment kind of mirrors Brandon Baker. And I'm not saying Malachi Lee's going to end up at Texas, but Brandon Baker, once the Oregon kind of fell off for him, it became Ohio State versus the SEC, and that was Texas and Georgia. Malachi Lee is Michigan versus Alabama, Texas, and Georgia. He's already official to Georgia. He's now official to Alabama last week. He's got Texas. Doesn't have anything on the 13th. Then he goes to Michigan last. Is Malachi Lee going to make the same decision that Brandon Baker did and say, I just want to play in the SEC? Visiting 3 SEC schools and 1 Big Ten school. If I'm Michigan, I'm a little queasy about that. But we'll see what happens at the end of the day. Kyle Flood will obviously be hosting Malachi Lee, but his eyes will be a little bit over towards College Station this weekend because John Turntine, Zayden Crimpin, and Sam Roseboro, this is their official visit weekend to A&M. And I think A&M's behind on all these guys. So A&M's got to make up some ground this weekend. And which of those 3 guys are going to make it up on? Could it be multiple guys? Felix Ojo is at Michigan as he continues his official visit tour and Big Ten tours at Ohio State last weekend before coming to Texas the 13th and Oklahoma scheduled on the 20th. But so Kyle Flood will have his eyes on Malachi Lee, who Texas wants badly. You're not bringing this guy in just because. They love Malachi Lee, as does Alabama and Georgia and Michigan. But he'll also have some eyes on College Station this weekend to kind of see what's going on over there, to see if A&M can make a move with any of the 3 targets that are going to be there this weekend.
Gerry, before we wrap this up, one more time, let everybody know why, if they've got anything with a motor and or on 4 wheels, they need to get in touch with Texas alum Mark Saunders.
Yeah, Texas alum Mark Saunders. You said it, Jeff. I mean, that's who I'd call, right? A Texas All-State agent, Mark Saunders, serves the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. That means he's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. If you got one of those, call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today, 512-218-8571. Do I need to say it another time? You'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. Give him a call today.
CJ, there's some Louisiana flavor on the visit list for this weekend, and I go to you because you were down in the boot a while ago, and I'm sure you'll be heading back quite a few times before the end of the 2026 cycle. Of all these kids from Louisiana, CJ, which one has your attention the most this weekend? We're talking about that group of Lamar Brown, Dylan Berryman, obviously Hayward Howard Jr. is committed, but give me one to watch this weekend.
Yeah, I think all eyes for me turned to Lamar Brown. And this is, again, one where Texas wasn't necessarily involved with for quite a while. You see Alan Clark stop by University Lab down there in Baton Rouge, who Alan Clark has obviously a lot of skin in the game down there in Baton Rouge, one of the Baton Rouge legends, as I've come to learn from my trip from New Orleans earlier this year. But they instantly connected with Lamar Brown. And this one felt like a Texas A&M versus LSU battle. It always feels like, kids that grow up in Baton Rouge just go ahead and, get the U-Haul to ship it out about a quarter mile and go move into LSU essentially. But that doesn't feel like the case. And instantly Lamar Brown took a liking to Texas. He's been in contact with Texas staff members for a while. Kyle Flood was originally the guy that they were recruiting him with, and that has since flipped to the defensive line with Alan Clark. And that connection has obviously spurned a June 6th official visit here. But look, getting him on campus is the big one. In these big 5-star national recruitments, nothing matters if you can't get him to campus. He's kind of teased a Texas visit for for several months now, and now you get him on for an official visit. We'll see if anything moves of that. Of course, he was at Miami last week. He'll go to Texas A&M and then LSU June 20th. So the hometown team gets the final say, but this is one where if you don't get him on campus, right, if you don't throw your hat in the ring, you have no chance. That'll be one to watch, of course. One of my favorite huddle watches of anybody in the country this year. And, of course, Hayward Howard coming back in. This will be a Texas and LSU battle through the finish. LSU continuing to push. It's likely he officially visits LSU later on the final week of June as well. But right now, committed to Texas, back on campus, gets to see Mark Orfe, who was at his spring game, the game that I was at earlier this spring as well. This is one who, if you get him on campus with a number of Louisiana prospects, they will be pulling them to this Texas class. I talk about Hayward and his family working to recruit for the Longhorns down there in the boot.
Gerry, only 2 defensive linemen coming in this weekend with Lamar Brown and Dylan Berryman. Texas is in the mix for we talked about this with the offensive line and the defensive line. You're in the mix with so many really talented high-level prospects, which is good. If there's a bad thing to it, Gerry, if you're one of these recruits, somebody's got to pull the trigger sooner or later, or you may not have a spot.
Yes, and Dylan Berryman coming in this weekend's a guy that's been leaning to Texas for a long time. I know some people put out picks for Purdue on that, but we'll see what Texas does here. How hard do they push this weekend? Because he, in all intents and purposes, is done with the official visit process after this weekend. He's already been to Purdue. He's at Houston, I believe, before the Texas visit. So it's going to be a big family affair down at Austin for Dylan Berryman this weekend. So we'll see, does Texas make that big push to get him in the boat? Here's the thing. He's a 0-tech, 1-tech over-the-ball player, right? So he is the one guy in this class right now that you label as just that. He's not really a 3-tech, so he may not have quite as much versatility, but he is strong. I was by Wichita earlier, I think in January it was, right before the Texas-Ohio State game. I was through there, and really strong kid, really good kid. You can know how much he likes Texas. But the interesting thing, Jeff, is to your point, you're in on the right defensive lineman when this is where guys are visiting this week. And I'll close out with this. Kendall Gerville and Vodney Cleveland are at Georgia. Okay. Drake Wynn also at Georgia. Then you get down to Alabama. Kamari Brooks, the edge, is there. Miami has James Johnson and Bryce Perry Wright this weekend. I mean, you're already getting the picture here. Jamari Simeon, who Texas is very much in on out of St. Augustine in New Jersey. He's at Penn State with Luke Wafel. I could go on. Jake Krull at Florida. Texas is in on the right guys on the defensive line, Draylen McCoy at Ole Miss. But to your point, Richard Wesley at Oregon, these are battles. These are real battles. And the question is going to become with Texas is if they plan to take 4, which is a possibility, 3 for sure, maybe 4 on the D-line in this cycle, do they not push for Berryman and run that risk, or do they get one guy in the boat and then start battling for the rest of these guys? That's what I think is going to play out this weekend.
With all due respect to the 3 specialists coming in, including Trot O'Neal, who's committed to Texas as a long snapper. CJ, I'll let you wrap this up with kind of those back 7 off-ball linebackers, defensive backs that are coming in this weekend. Any one of those guys that you're going to be watching, monitoring to see how things go during their 72 hours on campus?
Yeah, the one for me is Devon Benjamin. We got to speak with him just right outside of Moncrief for his unofficial in spring, and I was a little blown away in terms of the football IQ, his ability to regurgitate information that was just portrayed to him as well. And then you turn the tape on, and very much like Lamar Brown, just kind of blown away with the quickness, the speed, the football instincts. One of my favorite watches in this cycle. I think Texas is prioritizing very heavily right now, and this is a great opportunity with a commit already in the fold with Hayward Howard. You obviously have several others, but for this weekend to build out that secondary, Hayward Howard's going to be in his ear. Texas staff prioritizing Devon Benjamin. He's the one I've got circled in that back 7.
And I'd say this, I'm sure CJ would agree. I think it would be surprised if there's not a specialist commitment either late this weekend or early next week. Hunter and kicker coming in. And I think Texas leads for both. That doesn't mean they would get both, but I think they do lead for both interim visits.
Gerry, I'll give you the final word. If your loins are not girded already, is it too late to gird them, or
yes,
can you gird them ahead of this visit weekend?
No. It's too late. You need to be prepared for this the last weekend in May. You're good.
Jerry's loins have been girded since signing day in February, getting ready for 20.
I mean, look, over 50 official visitors for the first time in my years doing this as far as the June visits. Last year, Texas brought in 41 guys. They're going at least 10 plus past that in this month. That's all. It's a big difference. It's a drastic change.
Whichever one of you guys wants to take this real quick, because this just, Gerry, you throwing that number out there again with the 50 official visitors brought this up. The House settlement's still hanging out there. We're still in a pre-House settlement era of NIL, not just with Texas, but everybody. How much pressure is it for some of these deals on the NIL front to get done before those House settlement parameters get put down in pen?
For the schools that lead with NIL, it's imperative because that's what they base their recruiting strategy on. For the teams that are more fit, okay, you found your fit. We think you're a good fit. You're a good fit for us. I think there's a little more leeway there. But for the people who have led with NIL and they've talked, and a big part of their pitch has been front-loading NIL deals to try to get kids in the boat, this is a very impactful time for them, for those schools.
All right, we will keep you up to date here on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Like this video. We'll keep you updated as often as we can. But if you want the up-to-the-second information on what's going on, not just during the visit weekend, but all day, every day when it comes to Texas football recruiting, get over to ontexasfootball.com right now. We'll get you that discount on the subscription. Just use the promo code OTFOG when you sign up. That's OTFOG. And right now, it's $39.95 for 1 year of access. As Gerry said, 50 official visitors going to be on campus in the month of June. And hey, after that, then we got summer workouts going on. Before you know it, SEC Media Days will be here. Then we're into camp and we're off and running. So get over to ontexasfootball.com right now. Again, $39.95 for 1 year of access using the promo code OTFOG. Gerry, CJ, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise. As always, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, and thank you to the entire ontexasfootball.com staff and to you, the viewer, for supporting what we're doing here at On Texas Football. For Gerry and CJ, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, hook 'em.